My name is Stephanie Padilla. I'm really excited to be with you here today. As Jose mentioned, I am a senior director at Intel for a Xeon services business. So, what we try to do as part of my organization is once our Xeon CPUs actually get shipped to the market, we actually develop new businesses and offer services for those Xeon processors as they live for years and years with our customers in their data centers. So, really exciting innovation in business that we're working through today. So I'm going to cover a little bit today about edge computing. So just scratching the surface and some trends. You'll hear a lot more about trends later on in the presentations today and tomorrow, especially as we dive into smart cities and AI a bit more in detail, but I'll scratch the surface for you here in this presentation. I also want to talk for a few minutes at the end, not just about the importance of the digital skills that we need, right, for the future, for now and the future, but also the important soft skills that we need today and tomorrow for our leaders to just be aware of. And I bet many of you already have these amazing soft skills, but sometimes it's good to just look at those and reflect of, which ones am I exercising today and which ones, should I really, start to embrace in the future. Okay, so with that, let's get started. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So I hope you guys can all see this. I need to talk a little bit about my family. Sarah kind of introduced her background as well as Jose. So I have all of these, images up here to kind of just give you a peek into my upbringing. So I was born and raised in Tempe, Arizona. It's a suburb of the Phoenix, Arizona area. To two very loving and supportive parents, Mary and Albert Padilla, and they would be so embarrassed if they knew that I was showing their pictures here on the screen of, back when I was born. And so, they they were just, again, very supportive and loving. My dad had 13 brothers and sisters, and my mom had 8 brothers and sisters. So you can imagine, I think all but one stayed within the Phoenix area. So we had large gatherings. We had, just amazing conversations centered around food, birthday celebrations. So it's just been an upbringing full of love and support. I knew from an early age that I wanted to do something very challenging in my life. I was never the smartest person in the room, but I knew that I was curious and very hardworking, and I wanted to choose a major that no one in my family had chosen. So I chose to major in engineering, even though I knew no one that had chosen that major that I could really rely on for expertise or advice. However, my parents were very supportive of my choice. And although they couldn't help me with, any coursework or anything like that, they were just very supportive and encouraging, especially when I called my mom saying, Mom, I got a C on this exam, or I failed this exam. It was never a conversation of you should have done better. It was like, you did the best that you could. I know you, Stephanie. I know you did the best you could. What are you going to change for next time? So it was always those encouraging words that propelled me forward. And so they were there with me in the high points, and they were also there with me in the low points, even until the last final exam where I thought I wasn't going to graduate at all from college. They were there to support me, and you can see some of my college graduation photos down below with my grandparents and family. So it's a little bit about just embracing my family and culture, and that will always stay at the center of my heart. I do want to talk for a few minutes about my career journey. So, 20 years, gosh, flew by. I graduated from Arizona State University, as I just said, with a degree in electrical engineering in 2002. And then went on. At that point, by the way, the job market was pretty tough. Really very limited companies were hiring at that time. So I went ahead, I graduated with my undergrad. I said, hey, I'm just going to keep going on for my master's. If I don't have a job, I'm just going to keep going to school, like just keep at it, right? Well, it just so happens because of the internships I had, I was able to get a job offer right away at Motorola, which turned into Freescale Semiconductor. So I said, hey, great, I'm going to join the workforce. I'm going to start making some money, right? Paying off some of those student bills. And I'm going to get some work experience, and I want to keep going to school. So I kept taking some master's classes when I started working at Motorola, again, which became Freescale. And one of the master's classes I was taking at the time was focused on reliability, product reliability, and really just studying how parts, fail and making sure that we can test to understand root causes of failure of parts. And at the time in 2005, Intel was actually hiring quite a bit. And it just so happens they were looking for somebody with that expertise. And I had just taken this class, aced the interview and got into Intel in 2005. I was super excited. Intel was like one of the biggest and best companies to join. It still is a great company. And I haven't looked back. If you look at the rest of my career path, it's been at Intel. I've just celebrated my 17-year milestone at Intel. And I've had a variety of roles at Intel spanning more engineering focused. And then eventually over time, really my managers knew when I needed challenges. So they would challenge me with new things, take this on. Here's a problem, go help me, Stephanie, go solve it. Eventually, I moved into a manager role. That was an adjustment, right? Moving from a pure engineering role to management and learning how to manage across the globe, not just people locally in my vicinity, but learning how to manage people across the globe was really fun. I've got a lot of, trips to Munich and Israel and other places in the world since Intel's global. And then at some time that I'd spent so many years in engineering, I had a desire. I had gotten my MBA, which was funded by Intel, by the way, back in 2009. I always had this desire to sort of test my waters in the business side of things. So I made a leap in 2018 to not just fully join the business side of the house at Intel, but take an interim step as a chief of staff to a business leader, a business and technical leader. And I learned a tremendous amount from her. Her name is Sandra Rivera. She now heads our Intel data center and AI group at Intel. She's an amazing leader, and I encourage you to look her up. She has a compelling story as well. So I spent some time as her chief of staff. I really learned a lot from her on the business side, on the technology side, and really how to think like an executive. And then after 2.5 years of supporting her, I was promoted. I actually, was promoted into the current role that I have now, which is, leading new businesses for our Xeon processors after they launch into the market. So, kind of just describe a little bit of my career path there. And I have some kind of key takeaways down below that talks to some of the things that when I was putting this presentation together, some of the things that really resonated with me along the way. So one is, embrace your strengths. Each one of us has really unique strengths that we offer to our family, to, our peers, and to our managers and leaders. So really get to know what your strengths are. I strongly suggest, using tools like Strengths Finder as an example. There's other tools out there. But when you take those, Strengths Finder or whatever tool it is, share those strengths with your manager and your leaders so that they know, they probably recognize some of the strengths in you, but just so they know, and it helps them get to know you a little bit better, right? Manage your weaknesses. You don't need to, bring all of your weaknesses up, but just, if you don't love public speaking, I would say go out and do it 10 times and you'll probably get a little bit more comfortable with it. So just manage those weaknesses that you have. Also, one thing that helped me as during my career journey is people love talking about their expertise. So as I was getting into areas where I wasn't as familiar with in the business side or very technical topics, I would just set up one-on-ones with people, and they love sharing their knowledge and insights with you. And afterward, I would really either send them a goodie drawer award saying thank you, or just an email saying thank you. And that's how you can really learn, is through connecting with others. The next one is to be proactive and predictive. So what this means is when I was chief of staff for Sandra, I really had to stay 2 steps ahead, I would say minimum, of her when I was thinking about the work that had to get done, taking a step back, looking at my week ahead, looking at the month ahead and planning. So just be proactive, become prepared to whatever meeting that you're in, whatever presentation you're giving, just be proactive and prepared. The last one is something that I'm really passionate about too, is mentorship and coaching. So with mentorship, I do mentor at any given time a couple of individuals at Intel. I share whatever insights I have, what's worked for me, what hasn't worked for me. But honestly, I learn a lot from my mentees as well. So it's this just, great exchange of information, and also getting some coaching and sponsorship from senior leadership, right? That challenge you to think differently, challenge you on some of the ways that you're currently working. So again, this is just some of the kind of takeaways I've had from my career. Climbing this mountain, it's like, there's peaks and valleys. It's not a straight line. I'm really excited to see what comes next in my career, but I will tell you I really enjoy what I'm currently doing right now. So let me move on. Now that I've chatted you up with my family life and now my career journey, which I can't believe 20 years has just flown by. I'm going to dive a little bit into the topic at hand, which is more about some of the trends that we see, the technology trends. This is a slide that our Intel CEO, Pat Gelsinger, often uses to talk about the entire world is becoming digital. And he talks about, one of the areas is around semiconductors are the underlying technology enabling this digital world. So, and with semiconductors, continued advancement of semiconductors for high performance computing to again enable that digital world. And he talks often about the addition, obviously, it's not just semiconductors, but the addition of powerful software and applications to also provide the full compute that we need. He talks about the technology trends that he sees and what we're doing at companies like Intel, and this is also for companies across the tech world, are looking at these trends to see where we should invest, time, research, and our resources in. So really, let me start first with the ubiquitous compute, and what that means is just everything, right? Everything will have the capability for compute. We need high performance computing, and we need that to progress over time. Pervasive connectivity. Everything is connected, right? And we need stronger connectivity to make sure we can have an ability to port data from where we actually create data, the source of the data, all the way back through the edge, through the cloud infrastructure. So we need to progress from the 2G, the 3G, 4G LTE, and now, as you all are very familiar with, 5G and whatever comes next. So ensuring that we progress with connectivity. Talked a little bit about cloud to edge infrastructure, and we'll carry that over into the next slide. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into edge. And the last one is artificial intelligence. So really, with this large amount of data that's being generated, being able to process that, understand that, and gain insights automatically through a smart way, through the use of AI and machine learning. So this is definitely an area where many companies are diving into, and I know that there will be several talks focusing on AI within these next couple of days. So I love this slide that Pat Gelsinger talks about, because it really talks about the trends and where companies like Intel are focusing on our investments and our research. So on the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about the edge. And with the edge, let me just start with what is the edge? What is the edge definition? There's a ton of different definitions online. You can watch any sort of videos and they'll explain what edge computing is. And I like to think about edge as the placement of computing, like computing power resources, close to wherever the data source is being generated. So in this kind of visual example, if you have, a smart factory in the devices space, you would want to have edge computing capabilities, in the vicinity. If it's not in the factory, it's nearby, to be able to process that data real time. And you might ask, well, why do we need edge? Well, there's simply, drivers for the edge that we need. So you could actually take all the data that's being generated, backport that to the cloud itself, because the cloud is, relatively cheap. You can do a lot of processing, and applications reside in the cloud. But the latency of getting the data where it's generated all the way to the cloud presents some problems and some challenges. One is just the latency, the time that it takes to get the data from where you originated all the way through the cloud and back takes time. And for emerging
toma tiempo, y para las áreas como las
more real time. You can't afford that latency of sending the data back to the cloud to process for insights and then get that information back. So it's just the latency it really needs to be addressed. Also, the bandwidth, as we generate more data, more video, it's going to be more challenging for us to send that data all the way again back to the cloud and then back again. So from a bandwidth perspective, it's better to process data as much as we can close to where the data is being originated. Also, security. There's many applications or times where we need to keep that data in a specific vicinity, meaning it needs to be residing in the same country or even in the same location. We don't want to send data to the cloud. So if you don't have the strongest connectivity and you're trying again to send the data all the way back through the cloud and back, it can really create some connectivity challenges, which we hope in the future, as 5G really becomes an emergent technology, we're able to solve that through just the increased bandwidth. But these are the drivers of edge: is the latency, bandwidth, security, and connectivity. And so the interesting thing that Gartner is citing down below in the statistic is saying that, this is another reason why edge computing is so interesting and it's so big, is that majority, 75% of the enterprise generated data will be created and processed outside of the data center, right? Or cloud by 2025. So this is saying like more and more data is being generated, outside of traditional cloud in other areas, and we need to be able to process it closer to where it resides. So again, lots of opportunities for edge, edge compute. So I'm going to move to the next slide, which is again focusing more on, edge computing has been around for some time, and it's just continuing to get better as we develop better performance compute. There's applications that are being developed for the edge that are focusing on certain sectors and industries, and AI is emerging as well as 5G. So these are some of the different industries that are really taking advantage of edge computing. And Intel and other companies are really working with partners in these industries to transform, to help solve business problems, to help reduce costs and increase efficiencies. So for example, in retail, having an edge solution to help you with inventory management real time. And one of the other use cases for retail with edge, just recently, we all lived through COVID, right? So having compute and edge be able to monitor social distancing of people within stores and retail, and being able to provide those insights real time to the store owners, for example. So really interesting use cases, especially with COVID, which emerged. Healthcare is another one. Lots of opportunities to process just tons of data from patients, coupled with AI, being able to use, again, machine learning and get to insights on individual patients' healthcare faster, right? So it's just speeding up time to diagnosis, speeding up time to getting you the information you need to know, right? This is just really, really exciting. Manufacturing industry 4.0, smart factories. I'm going to go through an example of that in the next slide. And then I know there will be a lot of talk about smart cities, especially using the edge to, for example, monitor intersections, smart intersections, where you have all this data being generated and actually manipulating the lights, the traffic lights, to handle the real-time traffic situation. You need processing close to where that data is being generated. Again, you don't want to have to send all that data back to the cloud and then back, because it will just take too long to get those insights in return. And not to mention the size of the data that would have to go to the cloud and back. So just really exciting on what edge can possibly do. Again, coupled with 5G and AI, it will be very, very powerful for us in the future. Okay, so just looking at one example, right? And there's so many examples, again, of how edge computing is really changing industries today. In fact, again, I work for Intel, so I'm really, I really understand like all of the different cases that we are currently in today. There's a ton of, even go to Intel's website, there's a ton of different, proof of concepts and use cases that you can learn from, just readily accessible I'm sure that other companies have that as well. I really encourage you to learn more about some of these different innovations going on with the edge. So Intel, in partnership with a really big, well-known auto manufacturer, um, worked to, really bring improved product quality and reduce costs to building a smart factory of the future. So, as a proof of concept, what Intel did together with this big auto manufacturer is actually focus on one of the critical steps that was in manufacturing, which is the welding step. And as the key points you see here, welding is one of those critical steps with like could be up to 1 million types of welds a day, which is huge. And you can imagine, and this is where I have my Q&R background with sample sizes. Manual inspection is sample based, and it is time consuming and very costly, to really inspect on the line all the weld qualities that happen over the course of the days, weeks, and months. And there wasn't any kind of an inline inspection. Literally, the auto manufacturer would have to take a car off of the line, do 18-point inspection, right, which takes time, and then put the car back on the line and then go. That's one car being sampled out of all the cars that were worked on for that particular day. So it means that that car might have been fine, but the car before and after could have had issues, and there really wouldn't be a lot of insights to gain from. So using the data from the welding controllers plus an edge computing solution gave some real-time analysis in the quality of the welds, really giving insights into the quality again and reducing costs. And what they found in this particular use case was not only was there improved quality, right, but it was up to a 50% cost reduction just by putting an edge computing solution here on site with the smart factory, looking at data real time and making adjustments to the welding parameters to ensure good quality welds throughout the production of the day. And this is just one step in the whole manufacturing process, right? You could even look at other critical steps in manufacturing and apply very similar things. So pretty cool stuff. All right, so, and again, you're probably going to hear a little bit about edge computing, smart cities, AI, 5G throughout the next couple of days. So definitely take some notes, definitely do some research offline. There's just so much to learn about this emerging space. For the last part of the talk, I have two more slides left to go. One is, we talked a bit about, you definitely will need to have the technical skills, the hard skills to be able to really have some careers that are focused on edge computing, AI, 5G. However, those are not enough to really, progress forward in terms of your career, in terms of helping to solve problems. So I met with one of our chief talent officers at Intel, and I said, her name is Stephanie Crook. She's amazing. And I asked her, what are those soft skills that we also need in a digital world to complement those technical and digital skills? And again, I know in later sessions, you'll be touching upon some of these as well. And she said, you know what? Linda Hill, she's a Harvard Business School professor, has such great research. I recommend you go look at some of her research, really compelling, surveys and analysis she's done. So I did. I spent some time researching on a couple of the weekends I had, and it was actually the top 4 that she highlighted in some articles saying, hey, curiosity, number one. Bill Gates also in some of his talks to universities cites that curiosity is one of the top skills that we should all have in our lives. Being able to ask questions, genuinely try to understand, and that way in the future we take all these pieces of knowledge that we have, we take disparate pieces of information and build solutions for the future. So be curious, right? Dive deeper, ask questions, ask why. Okay, we've done things like that in the past. Well, why can't we do things differently going forward? So ask a lot of questions. 2, adaptability. Our workplace is changing. The world is changing. Just being able to manage through and adapt to your surroundings. That is also a really critical skill to have. creativity, right? So when you're faced with some challenges at school or at work, coming up with some options. And those options, especially if it's in the workplace, bring some of the data to support options. So if I'm facing a challenge at work and I need to discuss it with my manager, I usually just bring a couple of different options, kind of using my creative brain at that time. Hey, I think we could do these couple things. Here's some data I have to support. What do you think? And that always gets us kind of the brainstorming going and solving the problems for tomorrow. And then again, comfort with ambiguity. When I moved from an engineering role to more of a business role, I would say that it was very challenging. Meaning, the business side for me felt a bit more ambiguous, a little bit more gray, especially as you take on new businesses that are not established. So being able to be comfortable with that, being able to recognize that you can thrive in an environment that's ambiguous, but what you can do is actually set some goals within that ambiguous environment. At Intel, we've really adopted defining our objectives and key results for the year. So even in an ambiguous situation or environment you're in, you can still write down what do you want to achieve and how are you going to get there, even with an ambiguous type of role that you have. And you're going to learn so much with these more ambiguous type roles, right? And by the way, you should also be able to celebrate failure when everything doesn't go right with these ambiguous roles. And the last one, which is not least, but is just something that I love doing, is collaboration with remote and virtual teams, being able to collaborate, digitally, remotely with everyone. And inclusion, we've been really trying to focus on inclusion more at Intel as well. And as a leader, one example of inclusion I try to take upon every day is when I'm in meetings with my team or peers. Some people are very vocal and they will, take up the whole meeting, and other people are very quiet. So it's recognizing as a leader, I want to pull out and draw out the best ideas from everyone and make sure all voices are heard because people are wired differently. And so that's what inclusion is making sure all voices are heard and the best ideas come out, right? So it's just something that we try and try to practice as we go. So again, I put the link here in the slides. I really recommend reading a bit up on Linda Hill. She has some amazing research and just giving you some ideas about some of those soft skills to also embrace as you go. All right, so I have my last slide here. Last but not least, the summary and call to action. So as I talked in the beginning, I embrace your culture and background. As Sarah and Jose talked about in their openings, we all have a story. We all have people that supported us to get to where we are. Be proud of your unique journey. Be proud of the challenges that you've overcome and that you will overcome. I, have faced no shortage of struggles in my current career, and I do rely on my parents and I rely on mentors and sponsors to help get me through. And I also want to pay, and I do pay that forward as well. The next thing is, again, pursue more opportunities to learn more about the edge and edge computing. Data is pervasive. It's, we have no shortage of data in this world. It is powering a greater need for more processing power and more real-time analytics. There's a ton of data that's being generated, but how do we get the right insights of that data quickly to then help us inform of the next steps to take? The last one is recognize the skills needed by employers that they go beyond just the digital skills. They are those soft skills and other competencies that will make you such a valuable individual in the workplace. So with that being said, I hope you took something away from this talk. And again, it was my honor to be here, and I appreciate you taking the time out to be here as well. And with that, I'll welcome Jose back here to join me.
Stephanie, what a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much for sharing your amazing background, your journey on your personal and professional journey, spending many years in the semiconductor industry, and Motorola, and then of course they became a different company, and then a long career with Intel. You talk a lot of questions around the theme of, you talk very well about the hard skills and the soft skills, and we want to go a little bit deeper in each one of those. On if I'm a professional that started my career and I'm trying to look for, how to remain relevant. If you go a little bit deeper on the more technical skills, what are you seeing in the marketplace, or maybe at Intel, in terms of what you need from people coming into the workplace today from a harder skills set?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, one thing I didn't mention in my career journey is, I talked a little bit about there's a what's next, right? And even for myself, having graduated in 2002 with an engineering degree, electrical engineering, went back for my MBA in 2008, I actually want to go back to school. I want to go back to school because I feel like I had a great foundation, but we have to challenge ourselves to keep learning, right? Like as we go, because information technology, like we can become irrelevant. So we don't want that to be. So I would say some of the really important digital skills that we need now are really rooted in just the good analytics, having that engineering mindset, problem solving, but I would say one really emerging discipline that I think is fascinating is data analytics. So, knowing how to really, harness all of the data that's being generated and being able to make some sense of this information. So, definitely data analytics, I would say, is a really great. And you don't even have to major fully in data analytics. You can take certificates or even, some short courses on data analytics. But that is a really important one to have, as well as some basic coding skills as well.
Agree that data analytics is so foundational for so many different other roles, right? I personally, when I went into the semiconductor industry, I was astounded at how much I didn't know, in terms of the
Yeah.
complexity of semiconductors, for example. But as you said, if you have the analytical skills, if you have the discipline developed around those analytical skills, it can fast track the more detailed technical knowledge that you need to acquire and employ in your workplace. So that's tremendous insight. Stephanie, going on to the soft skills, Alberto Reyes asked a good question here about mentoring and coaching opportunities, and what are some of the first steps that to look for in a mentorship or coaching opportunity? I mean, sometimes people are a little bit shy, they are waiting for the company to have the formal mentorship program, and then maybe the company doesn't have it. Do you have any suggestions on how to identify the right mentor and maybe start developing a relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'm just now with my team going through our quarterly, we call them insights conversations. So it's having here's how you did this quarter, and then what are some of the areas that you want to develop, and I'm supposed to give my coaching feedback. So one of my employees said, "Hey, I want to get started with mentoring, but I'm not exactly sure how to do it." So with big companies, I agree, Jose. Like for Intel, we do have formal mentoring programs. What's nice about it is if you have like an area that you want to improve upon, like say you want to have more influence in, your day to day, you can actually do some spot mentoring with these kinds of programs. However, you don't have to do that. The you can actually look for leaders or people that you work with, and if there's something that they do really well, so say someone is just like stellar at presenting and you want to like know how do they prepare, get some one-on-one time with them, just informal mentoring. It doesn't have to be a formal one-to-one relationship, you know? Find people that have a skill that you want to know more about and just set up time. They'll be glad to share that with you. And then you just send them a thank you after, send them a goodie drawer. And maybe that relationship will carry on in the future, right? Into something more formal.
I agree very much. This is such great insight because sometimes I don't know if you have had similar experiences, Stephanie. Some of the my best mentors in my career have actually been formal mentors, not
Yes.
formal mentors. By the way, some of whom I had a long distance relationship. That maybe I followed their work, and then I learned from the insights by following their work at a distance. And it wasn't until much later in my career that I was actually had the opportunity to meet that person, that individual in person. Have you had similar situations happen to you?
Yeah, I have, but actually I wanted to say something else about mentorship, which is important. And again, sometimes it's hard to get started, but find somebody who has something that you really admire or skill you want to develop and start that way if it's hard to identify somebody. I will say one valuable mentorship opportunity I had was someone who I built a relationship with over time. I remember I got a really like not favorable review at work one year and I was super down because I gave my 180%, right? Like 200%. And literally I was going to go to HR and talk to them and say this is not fair. And so I met with my mentor and he actually changed my complete perspective on how to handle the situation, which thankfully he was able to talk me off the ledge and say, you know what? Why don't you just simply rewrite some of the points that your managers made, talk to them about it. Don't go to HR. Like, don't think you need to go there first, right? Have a conversation and sit down and have that dialogue. So mentors can really change your mindset, moving you from like off the cliff, to something like really actionable that you can take. So again, I can't stress mentorships enough, right?
Wonderful. And just as an overall note, in the United States, tomorrow, I believe, October 27th, is National Mentorship Day.
Oh,
I
I didn't
actually
know
have
that,
an article.
Jose.
Yeah, I have a long article on LinkedIn that I post annually about mentorship, and then I'll give the references later on to our community. I'm an executive advisor for Georgetown University on the mentorship program side, so there are a lot of insights I learned from them that I share on LinkedIn. But as side note, we're a little bit over time, but I don't want to let you go until I ask you this two quick rapid fire questions.
Okay.
First one from Juan Camilo Morello. Any question, any book you recommend on edge technology? And from Andy Wilfredo Pavão Mondoy, he's asking, are there any resources in Nicaragua that I can tap on either online or in person, maybe by Intel? So if any quick questions on that.
Yes. I mean, gosh, you don't even need a book on edge computing. There's so much content online. There's everything. Like, even for this talk, I was supporting Sandra, who was our edge leader. I had to go refresh myself a bit on the edge. So, no, there's so much material online. No recommended book. Just there's so many classes, YouTube videos, everything online. Just use the power of Google search and you will find amazing content. And then in terms of the Nicaragua piece, in terms of Intel, we're looking for talent all across the globe, right? We have a ton of great resources on our website, so I recommend using that as a resource as well.
Very, very well. We're going to set up for the next panel. First, I want to thank everyone here for presenting so many questions. Wonderful way of engaging with Stephanie here directly. We send you a link for the LinkedIn post that if you want to ask follow-up questions, you want to connect to our speakers, you have the references there. And then remind everyone that we have some exciting scholarships coming up in the next segment. And Sarah, I'll let you talk a little bit more about that. Stephanie, on behalf of our global audience, I want to say it. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and expertise with all of us today. Such an insightful presentation. Thank you so much for that.